As I think back upon it all, I see the ways in which life can make a poor end of fine and admirable beginnings. 5 years ago, we came to make an Eden on these shores. And had things gone as we hoped, I truly believe we would have remained here happily, dying peacefully in old age. When Friedrich and I left Germany, ours was a flight to total solitude. At the time, neither of us could have imagined that others would intrude upon our island paradise. Nor could we have foretold the strange and sinister drama that would be unleashed upon us all. A drama that, over 5 short years, would leave our dream in fragments and send my dear companion Friedrich to his grave.
I find it very mysterious. How in the little island that all these people can disappear.
You can't rule out the fact that somebody actually took the law into their own hands because it was the only way to bring sanity back to the island.
That is the passion of the whole thing, is that it just never got solved.
Floriana is just one mystery on top of another.
Yo me llamo Octavio Latorre. Mis temas de investigación han sido la historia humana de Galápagos. Cuando yo comencé el primer libro, más bien esto, La maldición de la tortuga, tuve que entrar en los archivos respirando polvo de siglos. Oí ahí de que había una leyenda de que las tortugas en Galápagos ya han desarrollado una captación de la mentalidad de la gente que pasa por allí. Entonces ya llega a conocer, los que vienen con malas intenciones les maldice.
Patience, as Nietzsche says, is the most difficult of virtues. My decision to leave behind my lucrative practice of medicine and go into solitude is not a rash inspiration. For 20 years, the idea has been maturing in my mind. Now, at the age of 43, my time has come. Organized society appears to me as a huge, impersonal monster, forging ever new chains with which to shackle its members. Civilized man works only for money, while the world chases madly after the ephemeral and the valueless. Fortunately, in Dora, I have found a woman who fully embraces my point of view.
With all the strength and obstinacy in me, I have defended myself against preconceived notions of bourgeois homemaking. The German woman has been content to model herself through the ages as the Hausfrau, her horizon bounded by the four walls of a few stuffy rooms. The emptiness and frustration of such an existence poisons the spirit.
Dora and I are turning our backs on civilization. We have mapped out a plan to permanently migrate to an uninhabited spot on the Earth's surface, the Galapagos. The explorer William Beebe has declared these islands to be the world's end, and it is this isolated archipelago on which we have set our hopes.
To the consternation of all our friends and relatives, Friedrich has left his wife, and I my husband. Love, in the ordinary meaning of the word, does not convey my feeling for this man. Friedrich is my teacher and my guide. Friedrich is my fate.
Because my grandfather told it to me and my father told it to me, I have to tell the truth. Friedrich was a genius, but he, without any doubt, like all genius people, he had also his dark sides. He was influenced by the philosophy of Nietzsche, that you only have yourself. He wanted to go away because he didn't love a human being. Nietzsche didn't love the human being. But he should have known also what Goethe said, that you cannot leave the civilization without being punished. You will be punished. If you go alone on an island, there can happen terrible things. And though I think the Galapagos tragedy was programmized like a movie from the beginning to the tragic end.
On July 4th, 1929, Friedrich and I sailed from Amsterdam, and we rejoiced as the world disappeared behind us. A 4-week journey across the open seas brought us to Guayaquil, Ecuador, where we were forced to spend the entire month of August waiting for the only schooner that sailed between the mainland and Galapagos. Then, at last, we were truly on the way to our promised land. Seeking total isolation, we avoided the island of San Cristobal, for it serves as an outpost of the Ecuadorian government. Nor did we choose Santa Cruz, whose shores were already dotted with the houses of a dozen or more European settlers. Instead, we sailed to the uninhabited island of Floriana, where our nearest neighbors would be more than 60 miles away. As I caught my first glimpse of Floriana's rugged shore, not a shadow of fear or regret clouded my certainty in our decision to settle here. It was September 19, 1929, and we were alone at last.
The shore was a dead and thorny waste, but an hour's walk inland revealed to us a leafy sea of greenness. In the center of this fertile basin welled up a clear spring to support the lush growth of vegetable life. We had found the ideal spot for our future home.
Efectivamente, la primera impresión fue maravillosa. Y ellos creían que podían vivir como Adán y Eva en el paraíso, solos, en completa paz y tranquilidad. En el pequeño valle donde se establecieron le llamaron Frido, unido de la palabra Friedrich y Dor.
Our immediate concern is to tame this wild jungle and make from it a garden. There we will plant the seeds we've brought from Germany, which are so crucial to our sustenance. Dora and I are both vegetarians. We do not eat meat as a matter of principle. Although this work is the hardest I've ever undertaken, I approach it with the utmost joy, for it is the fulfillment of a dream.
Friedrich's Herculean achievements rouse my ambition to do likewise, but I find that my efforts pale beside his. My weakness and infirmity frustrate me. When I first met Friedrich, I had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and told my illness was incurable. But Friedrich was not like my other doctors. When he took over my care, he talked about the power of thought and told me that I need not submit to illness if I would learn to think in a way that would make me well. That was all well and good in Germany, but here on Floriana, sometimes I find myself literally unable to go another step.
I must frequently remind Dora that Nietzsche says, to live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. We cannot expect to find paradise anywhere unless we are willing to create it.
I pull myself together and struggle on, resolving to let no trifle interfere with the fulfillment of our great mission.
I would have a very hard time leaving family, friends, place I grew up and all that, and just departing forever to some godforsaken corner of the world, like my parents did.
Why would people do that, you know, to leave civilized world and come out to a rock?
You asked me what brought us to the Galapagos. Our life had no meaning. We wanted to leave Europe. We wanted to leave Belgium. You know how you live in a city, you have to be in your rank, and you work, and you buy a car. And we didn't like that. It's a utopia, it's a desire, it may be naive, it may be a dream. Probably was a dream, but we made it very real.
As far as I understood, my father said he went out to find paradise. To get away from the glittering shit, he said, get away from the world and get away from Hitler. My father was very anti-Hitler. Hitler was coming to power, and my grandfather, he wanted his boys out of Germany. He had read about the Galapagos Islands, so he sold his little farm, gave the boys the money, and they went over the border to Denmark, and they bought this boat and sailed away. My father was a real islander. He didn't want all this movement towards, civilization.
My father, yeah, he was very, very independent. She was a real pioneer type too, obviously. I think it applies to most people coming to a place like this. They left everything behind. There is a certain winnowing process, you might say, of people moving to a place like this. Lots of times it's going to be people that don't really fit in, don't find it easy to be part of a regular society, which is probably going to make it not as easy for them to get along with other people.
We've now been here a year and a half, and Frido has begun to assume the appearance of a human habitation. Yet, though our aim was to lead a life of contemplation, the ceaseless manual toil has dulled the edges of our spiritual life. Our Eden is no place of rest, as I had thought it would be. And neither is this Eden a peaceful one. Friedrich is seemingly eternally dissatisfied with everything I do, and at times the conflict between us bursts out into something horrible.
I want to see Dora as more than other frail and cowardly women. I cannot relax the sternness of her education. For us, there's only discipline. We must conquer by will.
The letters that Friedrich wrote home, he never wrote in his letters any nice thing about her. He was only describing her disease. My father was shocked because there was nothing written of love, even nothing about pity. Yes? Look, for Dora, Friedrich was something like a god. But Dora surely began to have another image of Friedrich.
Friedrich does not see that I need to be loved and treated kindly. He spends each hard-earned minute of spare time on his philosophical work and is unconscious of everything else. As solace, I turn to my burro, lavishing on him all the care and attention I have to give.
Dora's attachment to wild creatures is a source of great disappointment to me. She thinks that her love of animals is good and admirable, but her affection for them is nothing but a flattering of the animal within herself.
I confess that I do spend a great deal of time with my dear burro. Sometimes, however, even he is not enough. Often I feel that I should go mad with joy if any other human being should come into sight. Even a cannibal, even a bloodthirsty buccaneer.
No school, no doctor, no stores, no medicines to be bought, no communications hardly at all. If the world had gone under out there, we wouldn't have known a thing. I'm Carmen Angermeyer from Galapagos. I'm a housewife here, and I've lived here, I think, 74 years. My father was a very practical person. And my father said, there's going to be war, he said. I can smell it, he said. He came out to the Galapagos because he read some of Dr. Ritter's articles and stories. So he decided to have a look. He thought for him it was very nice, but for women and children it was no good, he said. And my mother thought that she might like it here. And so we came in 1934. I was 6. The only thing I didn't have was playing mates. That was about the only thing that was missing. Okay, if a fish boat would come. And of course the ship once in a while went to take some cargo, some food stuff and so on. Mail, which is so important, that was made everybody furious. A ship came and had forgotten the mail bag. And then you got the letters later, they were almost a year old the next time the ship came.
The cargo boat put in at Post Office Bay for the first time in 6 months, bringing a parcel of mail from Germany as well as several newspapers. It seems that our letters home to Germany have been leaked to the press. People in many countries have read garbled and exaggerated accounts of who we are and what our aims have been in fleeing civilization. I feel as if the things we hold most sacred have been dragged mercilessly through the mire, and that Friedrich and I have been made to look like a pair of eccentrics escaped from some psychological zoo.
Log entry, January 3rd, 1932, aboard the research vessel Valero 3. We are a crew of 20 scientists under the command of Captain Alan Hancock, Los Angeles oil man, banker, expert seaman, philanthropist, and patron of pure science. I am John Garth, entomologist, known to my shipmates as Bugs. Our mission here in the Galapagos is to collect and document the rarest of biological specimens. But today we are stopping on the island of Floriana for a very different reason: to visit the modern-day Adam and Eve rumored to be living there. Accounts of this hermit couple describe them as nudists, cavemen, eccentric philosophers. We look forward to meeting them with much curiosity. We were shocked to find that, contrary to all the lurid reports, the Ritters are actually one of the most clever couples in the world. Dr. Ritter has devised many tools and methods to wrest what they can out of this arid land. Many photographs and moving pictures were taken. Indeed, when Dr. Ritter demonstrated his new shower bath, at least 6 cameras covered the event. Call them freaks if you like, but they have had the courage to put their theories to the test and make a practical experiment. We insisted they pay a visit to the Valero, and despite their professed dislike of human society, they eagerly took us up on this invitation. We welcomed the Ritters aboard with classics of German music. Dora was moved to tears by our concert and seemed more than a bit nostalgic for her native land. The doctor, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable with her emotional display and tried to distract her with a lecture on the psychological unity of music. Before sending the Ritters back to shore, Captain Hancock pressed them to tell him of any provisions they lacked. Initially, Dr. Ritter would only admit to needing lamp oil by which to write, but in the end, he also accepted gifts of soap, rice, chocolate, cooking oil, a stove, and even a Winchester rifle. For all their claims of self-sufficiency, they both seemed quite glad as they left the ship laden with this bounty.
As the Valero crew took us back to Floriana, I thought wistfully of the lovely music that we should probably never hear again, and of the sympathetic new friends who were leaving us all too soon.
The visit by Captain Hancock and his scientists was well and good. They are like-minded people, but should others turn up intending to disrupt our solitude in a more permanent fashion, we will not be so hospitable. We shall resolutely resist the establishment of any community.
We certainly didn't come with the same attraction than nowadays the thousands of visitors that come here. That was not why we came here. When we came here in the Galapagos, we were on our own. It was just rocks and a few houses. We could take land what we wanted. People told us that people who come here and want to have a piece of land, it's about 200 hectares. Free, just take it.
What I always felt from Mom and Dad was they wanted a place that was primitive enough to not have people tell you what to do or what to not do. To find that kind of paradise, you have to look for a place you never hear of. Because if you hear about it, it's obviously out to the world, and it's bound to be sentenced to not be a paradise anymore.
I don't like to use that word paradise. Why do people are always using
you were looking
group? No, we were not looking for a paradise.
No,
please.
not a paradise, but you were
We were looking for a place where we were our own masters and that it depends on ourselves.
And that's exactly what you found.
Well, I don't know. If there is a paradise, I hope it's nicer than this.
I do not know why it is that certain events cast ominous shadows long before they come about. But so it was with me before the Wittmers came. The weather was perfect, the garden growing well, and yet something within me refused to be quieted. Then, one morning, far out at sea, we saw a schooner which seemed to be approaching Black Beach.
I felt terribly alone that day in August 1932 when we first landed on Floriana. Surely no more forlorn and forbidding place could be imagined than this island. My husband, Heinz, and I did not speak. We felt too downhearted. Yet there was no going back. We had invested all our savings on equipment and supplies, and in so doing had burned our bridges. It might be months before another ship put in here. And even if a ship did come, we could hardly get back to Germany on the 20 marks we had left between us.
I must admit that this landscape is not encouraging. It is certainly no South Sea paradise, and the weight of the decision to come here rests heavy on my shoulders. My son Harry, from my first marriage, has always been delicate, and last spring his health took a turn for the worse. It was then that I came across Friedrich Ritter's articles in the Cologne newspapers. While reading his words, I realized that the Galapagos is our solution. If the Ritters could do it, so could we. We too can leave city life behind us and give Harry a healthy Swiss family Robinson existence.
I confess that I was sadly disappointed at our first meeting with the Widmers. Frau Widmer, in particular, looks to be a rather ordinary type of woman who would like nothing more than to devote herself to housekeeping. It is clear that neither of the newcomers share our spiritual goals, and I'm quite certain that life in the wilderness will soon lose its charm for them.
Upon our arrival, Dora immediately began discussing the philosophy of Nietzsche. I found this a bit absurd. We want to be settlers in a more ordinary sense. Our equipment is not Nietzsche, but perseverance and the will to work. We felt rather out of place and prepared to leave.
They came expecting to be treated like invited guests, and the only way we can deal with them is to make it clear from the beginning that we consider them intruders. Wanting them as far from us as possible, I took them more than an hour's difficult journey up the hill and showed them some old pirate caves with a nearby spring.
There were the caves, 3 of them together under the slope of a hill. I immediately began sweeping the interior of the largest, which would be our new home. How glad we are that these caves exist. And yet it concerns us that we are now located so far from Dr. Ritter.
Margaret estaba encinta de 5 meses. Entonces, una de las razones por qué había elegido la isla era por el médico. Esto le disgustó mucho a Richter porque él no quería servir de médico de nadie.
I find it shocking that the Widmers have come to Floriana to take advantage of my skill as a physician. I have made it eminently clear that I do not intend to practice as a doctor and that I refuse to sit around the caves all day attending to Margaret. I am highly resentful and would gladly put all of them on the next boat back to Guayaquil.
Ritter's unwillingness to assist us is a great disappointment. It seems a pity that he should be so unpleasant, especially as we happen to all be Germans.
I wonder if Dr. Ritter really grasps that if something goes wrong, he will carry a heavy burden of responsibility for refusing to give me help. What kind of doctor could be so heartless?
Dr. Ritter came out of a family for which the emperor and the fatherland were the most important thing. So, when the First World War began, it was naturally that he and also my father go to war to defend the fatherland. They went with flowers on their rifles, singing, drinking beer, thinking that this war will be finished in 6 weeks. But they ended in these frontline trenches, seeing the dead and wounded people everywhere around. Then they began to understand what really war is. And In his philosophy, Friedrich said that war is fixed in the genes of the human being. It is fixed in the genes, the character of human being. Surely he was scarred by the First World War, and I think that this changed him a lot.
There's a race of men that don't fit in, a race that can't stay still, so they break the hearts of kith and kin, and they roam the world at will. They range the field and they rove the flood, and they climb the mountain's crest. Theirs is the curse of the gypsy blood, and they don't know how to rest. They say, could I find my proper groove, what a deep mark I would make. So they chop and change, and each fresh move is only a fresh mistake. The men that don't fit in.
That's one of my father's favorite poems. Robert Service.
Today was a day of great excitement. Our first visitors have come. This morning I heard our dog barking, and through the trees I saw a small, slim woman of about 40 riding up on a donkey and carrying a revolver. There were 2 German men with her, one thin and blonde, and the other dark and swarthy. Both of them appeared to be gentlemen in waiting, or perhaps even lovers. What an extraordinary trio. As the woman dismounted, she introduced herself as Baroness von Wagner from Paris, by way of Vienna, and proceeded to make an announcement that was more than a little alarming.
Darlings, you know my plans, don't you? I've come to establish a grand hotel. It will be called Hacienda Paradiso. Philipson is my architect and Lorenz my engineer. After long and mature analysis, I've come to the conclusion that my project is feasible. After all, woman is capable of everything, from the highest to the lowest. Certainly she is greater and more resolved than the male.
What a strange figure the Baroness presents. I think she might have dreams of being a feudal queen, with servants, retainers, and slaves to carry out her slightest wish. Margaret and I gazed at her speechless as she announced that she and her men would be living in our orange grove, beside our little stream. She said she wouldn't dream of living anywhere else until her hotel is built. We've hardly been here 2 months, and already there are unwelcome neighbors living right outside our door.
Forgoing any of the normal courtesies, the Baroness marched over to our spring. She was followed closely by the blonde, who took off her shoes like a devoted servant and proceeded to wash her feet thoroughly in our drinking water. After this ceremony had been completed, the Baroness took her leave to pay her first visit to the Ritters.
Without waiting for an invitation, she settled in one of our deck chairs. She then demanded a cup of tea with an attitude that made it clear she regarded Frido more or less as hers. The Baroness told us of her plan to turn Floriana into a kind of Miami for American millionaires. We are appalled at this profit-making scheme. The very idea of it casts a sordid blight upon our island.
I, for one, am disgusted by her theatricals. If she had a single proper man with her instead of a pair of servile gigolos, she could be kept in order without trouble. As you can imagine, we weren't too pleased to have her giving orders in our house, and Dora told her so in no uncertain terms. In the end, the Baroness went off highly offended, breathing fire and slaughter against us.
She is, in one way, so trivial and frivolous, and in another way, so sinister. But unlike Margaret Widmer, at least the Baroness is no little bourgeois Hausfrau. Even as an enemy, she is a person worthy of one's steel.
The Widmers and the Dr. Ritter hated the woman. They said she was vulgar and offensive and a terrible person. But of course, a black and white image is never true. And well, my father had a good impression of the Baroness. My father came to Galapagos in 1931. He came to Santa Cruz, found a small Norwegian settlement there, and he liked it. And he sent for my mother and me. At that stage, there was very little known about the situation in Floriana. And my father had a good sailing ship, so he decided to check out the island. The Baroness came down to Post Office Bay. She got to talk with my father, and they had a very friendly relationship. Well, he said she was a pleasant person, and she seemed an educated person, and he had a good impression, in general. But other people disagree.
Today we had a tremendous commotion. 2 Norwegians who live on Santa Cruz Island dropped anchor in Post Office Bay. One of them, Christian Stamper, shot a small calf, intending to return with it to Santa Cruz. Upon hearing the shot, the Baroness charged out.
This was the custom among the Norwegians. When they went to Floriana or Isabella, they would go and hunt for beef. And the Baroness came out in Post Office Bay with her revolver in hand, you know, and was very angry and said they had killed one of her animals.
That was my calf, she shouted. Philipson! And Philipson came out, taking up a stand near her. Both men yielded and fled.
And of course, Stampa made a straight course for Dr. Ritter.
We were awakened by frantic shouts, and to my horror, I saw Christian Stamper staggering towards our house. His clothes were torn to ribbons, and his face was white and set like iron. Apparently, the Baroness had confronted him with violent gestures and a rifle, yelling that the island is now hers with everything upon it. This story has shattered even Friedrich's calm. He has written up a detailed report about the Baroness's fantastic behavior. Stamper is taking this report to the governor on San Cristobal.
You take 100,000 people and 1,000 people, island life is exactly the same. The same sort of mechanics as to society are happening. My name is Daniel Fitter Angermeyer. I suppose I'm 3rd generation Angermeyer. I was born here in Galapagos. Small island environments, you always had confrontations and, you know, problems going on for years, and so did that to me years ago, and so did this to me years ago, and you never pay me back that. I mean, small island life.
Like the saying goes, little town, big hell, basically. Well, it was part of that factor here, too. So the people who paid perhaps a bit too much attention on that factor really hit them hard. There was nowhere to escape.
The people were very friendly, but distance and so on. We talked about many things, but each of us in your house. And the leitmotif was, we did it, we had a hard time, and you have to learn.
People had to get going on their own. They could ask, everybody would help them out, but everybody expected also that the persons would make an effort, you know, and learn and go at it, and not just sit there and ask and expect somebody doing it for them.
I don't know, I cannot give a name to that. Everyone for himself.
The first labor pains began on December 30th. Dear God, I prayed, let it all go well. Heinz wanted to send for Dr. Ritter, but I refused to let him, determined that we'd get along somehow without his help. The pains were very violent, but the day passed, and so did the night. I got up, walked around a bit, and baked a New Year's cake before the pains became too agonizing for me to do anything but lay and bite hard into my pillows. That night passed too, and now it was New Year's Day. It was 72 hours since the pains had started, and they were more than flesh and blood could stand. For a moment, everything went black. I screamed so loud for Heinz that my own voice echoed back through the cave. I could see one thing quite clearly. My life was in danger and only a doctor could save me. Dr. Ritter, I muttered. Get Dr. Ritter. 3 long hours passed before Heinz returned with Dr. Ritter. Ritter examined me and was now a doctor pure and simple. He washed his hands a dozen times with antiseptic soap, and then he performed the operation. The pain was so cruel I could have screamed my head off. But somehow I managed to bear it in silence. Then suddenly I heard a cry, a short, shrill cry. It was the first cry of our newborn child. Dr. Ritter proceeded to congratulate me on my baby son, Rolf.
Margaret was very brave, and Rolf is certainly a fine, strapping boy. I hope his upbringing will be stern enough to make of him a worthwhile character.
Shortly after Rolf's birth, the Baroness came to visit with Philipson and Lorenz. She had no revolver in her belt that day and seemed in an unusually genial mood. After congratulating me on my son, she presented me with clothes she brought from her Paris boutique, announcing that he must be the most dapper little man on our island.
The coming of the baby created an atmosphere almost like Christmas. Friedrich and I chose presents for him. A 2-year-old date palm, vegetables, fruits. For the Baroness, we gave kitchen herbs. All differences and quarrels were momentarily lost in a general warmth and goodwill. And I wanted very much that we should all, from now on, live in harmony and avoid future conflicts.
Esto, mi camita es eso. Mi camita.
¿Te acuerdas?
Cuando nací.
No. La pregunta es, ¿alguna vez tú escuchaste que el doctor Ritter había hecho un comentario de por qué debías tener una cama tan dura? ¿Te acuerdas?
Mira, del comentario, lo que dijo doctorita, yo sí no me acuerdo. Lo único lo que sé es lo que mamá dijo, y creo que está en el libro escrito también, que el doctor Rita dijo, no le haga la cama demasiado suave.
¿Por qué?
Que el doctor Rita dijo, Los que duermen en cama muy suave se hacen vagos.
¿Te acuerdas cuando la tía nació?
Que yo no sé, yo no me acuerdo.
Pero sí le quería.
Tampoco no sé. Yo tenía 4 años y ahí no se acuerda, yo no me acuerdo. ¿Tú te acuerdas cuando tenía 3 años?
Absolutamente todo.
I was the first European girl born up in the Highlands. And I was a surprise. Mom didn't know I was on my way. But then she celebrated her birthday, and they all had potato salad. And in the evening, in the night, she got a tummy ache, and she didn't feel well at all. And she said, it must be the potato salad. But it wasn't. It was me who was coming. I have some very good memories, yes. When I was a little girl, I had 2 big wishes. And that was first a hunting knife and then the gun. And when I turned 15, I got the gun. And I turned out to be a good shot. I only needed 1 bullet to kill a goat or a pig. So little by little, I was discovering that it was great to grow up like this in a very special way, and all the liberty I had.
As a child,